Man loses job over allegedly mocking the death of Nolan Wells. Here's the video that caused the outrage online.
Yep, you got that right. Yeah, we did it. We sure did do it. What you think? What you think we do when we take y'all young men camping with us? We know them boys don't know how to swim. Yeah. You throw them in that water. We say, swim, boy, swim. Woo! Learn how to swim, boy. You can't do it. You can't do it, boy. Y'all ain't ever gonna learn how to swim. Yeah. Yeah, they did it. Them boys did it. This is a damn tradition for us. Yeah. This is a tradition. We take you boys out in the woods. And we throw you in the swamp. We throw you in the creek. We throw you in the springs and rivers. Yeah, we throw you in them oceans. Y'all can't do a damn thing. Y'all be in there splashing and screaming, I can't swim! I can't swim! Oh, hell no! But you know, it ain't our fault. It ain't our fault you're stupid. A grown man don't know how to swim. Yeah, what y'all think we do? You know, yeah, it's a big conspiracy. You know, every 6 months this skin tone, we all get together in our neighborhoods and we have like a little neighborhood meeting. And y'all ain't invited. We get together, we make plans, we talk about y'all, talk about, yeah, let's put this one in football, you know, let's put this one in basketball, yeah, let's encourage him to do that and this, yeah. We bet on y'all. Man, we just play y'all like a damn game and y'all don't even know it. This is a tradition.
Thanks for giving us the master plan, homie. You should have dropped a little blueprint. It's the cackling for me. As he talked about blacks being thrown in the water and not being able to swim. And now he's thrown in the unemployment line. I actually think HR should capture that cackle, make it a ringtone, fire him and then play it, you know? See if he's laughing then. Now, guess what? He's claiming in a follow-up video that it was just satire. Yeah, I lost my job for this. Come on, I was just kidding. Let's cue it up.
The FBI reached out to somebody related to me. I don't know why they didn't reach out to me. I don't know why they haven't come talk to me. But they asked them if I had anything to do with the what's his name? Nolan. The Nolan Wells.
The independent autopsy for Nolan Wells has now been released, and I'm not a lawyer or a forensic pathologist, but we all have access to the report, so let's talk about what it actually says versus what you might be seeing in some of these headlines. So a 30-second recap on the case in case you need it. This is 18-year-old Nolan Wells, and on July 4th, Nolan and several of his friends went to the Pearl River to celebrate the holiday. It is reported that at some point, Nolan became separated from the group he was with, and so at some point, the group leaves and goes home, and Nolan's body is discovered days later in the river. And since this has all happened, there have been a lot of questions surrounding what exactly happened that night, and that is what led us to this report. But before I get into the details of the report, I first want to make sure we're all on the same page. Okay, so anytime someone dies, well, most times, not every time, but anytime a death requires an autopsy, the medical examiner or forensic pathologist for that state performs the official autopsy. They get the body first. And then on top of that, families have the option of hiring their own independent forensic pathologist to do a second autopsy. So that's what happened here. The Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office received Nolan's body first, so they performed the official autopsy. And then Nolan's family, with the help of Colin Kaepernick, requested a second independent autopsy. And that's the report that was released today. And the first thing worth noting from this report has to do with Nolan's organs. So here on the report, under the preliminary findings, the report says a Y-shaped incision of the anterior torso. And a Y-shaped incision looks something like this. Underneath that, it says organs removed. And then underneath that, it says accompanying the body in the body cavity. So in layman's terms, that means that the pathologist from the first autopsy, the one from the Mississippi Medical Examiner's office, removed Nolan's organs, which is normal to do during an autopsy. And when that pathologist was done with the first autopsy, he put Nolan's organs back in the body cavity, aka back into his body. What they commonly do is put the organs in a bag and then put the bag of organs back into the body. But this report doesn't say if that's what happened or not. So just know his organs in some form or fashion were put back into his body. And when this second pathologist received his body, his organs were there. However, it is important to say that because the organs had been removed during the first autopsy, it did affect the ability of the second pathologist to do a full examination. For example, the report explains that the second pathologist wasn't able to see Nolan's organs in the original state they were in when his body was found. And again, that's because the first pathologist removed them and then put them back. So this second pathologist couldn't observe Nolan's airways and lungs to determine if water was present in them. And he also wasn't able to examine Nolan's stomach to see if there was something there that could have contributed to his death. So he's not saying that this is suspicious or that the first pathologist did something wrong. He is simply saying he couldn't do his full examination really because he was second in line. Okay, now let's move on to the second takeaway from the report, and that has to do with what wasn't with Nolan's body when it arrived. According to the report, right under the section about the organs, it says Nolan's anterior internal neck structure was absent, and then in parentheses, it says not received with the body. You see the difference? The neck part specifically says not with the body versus the organs part didn't say that. So his organs were there. Now back to the neck. This second pathologist explains that he assumes Nolan's neck structure was missing because the original pathologist kept it to do some further examination, which again, pathologist number 2 says is common forensic pathology practice. So this is all normal. But again, because this second pathologist couldn't examine Nolan's neck, he is unable to determine if something happened to Nolan's neck that could have contributed to his death. Y'all still following? Now, the last takeaway from this report has to do with this red discoloration that was found on the back of Nolan's head. Pathologist number 2 says during his autopsy, he identified a 12 by 8 inch area of red discoloration in the deep soft tissue in the back of Nolan's skull. And it's unclear where that discoloration came from. The pathologist notes there were no cuts or other injuries to that part of Nolan's body, nor were there any skull fractures that could have helped explain why this part of his body was discolored. The report highlights that this discoloration could not have been discovered in the first autopsy because that pathologist didn't open up the back of Nolan's neck. So pathologist number 2 is basically calling for further investigation into this discoloration to try and figure out where this came from. So those are the highlights. And after all of that, the overall finding from this second pathologist is that Nolan Wells' cause of death is undetermined and his manner of death is also undetermined. And for context, cause of death is like the literal reason someone died, aka a gunshot or a stabbing. And then the manner of death is the circumstances surrounding that death. So that would be the death was a homicide or a suicide or an accident. But in regards to both, the second pathologist is saying undetermined. And then the last thing before I go is, like I stated at the top of this video, the results from the first autopsy from the Mississippi Medical Examiner have not been released. That autopsy is still technically ongoing. There are still things being tested and still things being examined. And so once those results are complete and released, then I think it'll be worth going back to this second report to compare notes and see if there are further questions. But I'm not a lawyer. That's just my take. What do y'all think?
As you can imagine, I've been tagged many times to talk about Nolan Wells' autopsy, private autopsy report that was released. I'm Dr. Wolf. I am a board certified forensic pathologist, and I do primary autopsies and I do second autopsies. Well, this particular video, I want to talk only about the neck because I have been scrolling through all social media and I see lots of people talking about why the neck was missing. Now, I'm going to get to that, but I'm going to tell you what this video is not about. I'm not talking about the other autopsy results. I'm not talking about the circumstantial information. I am not talking about the medical examiner or medical examiner's office. This is strictly about the neck. So it's actually common for the pathologist and office of record to keep the neck. And I pulled my last private autopsy report that I did, and I'm going to show you this is text from my last autopsy report that's a private. In determining whether or not fatal neck trauma occurred, the examination of the hyoid bone is necessary. However, the hyoid bone was not identified at the time of autopsy. It is fairly common practice for the hyoid bone to be collected and preserved at the time of the initial autopsy. Therefore, I could not comment on whether or not the hyoid bone was damaged. Quick explanation on this one. This particular case, they did send the larynx itself with the thyroid cartilage and the trachea. They did not send the hyoid bone. And some offices only keep the hyoid bone, and some offices keep the entire laryngeal structure. Now, the question is, why would you do that? And the answer is this. The laryngeal structures are very key in these cases, and they are also a very difficult dissection in terms of you cannot do that dissection well at the time of autopsy. And the reason why it's technical, but the tissue is very fresh and it's very difficult to dissect off versus if you put it in formalin solution, and it fixes and it gets a little more firm, and the dissection can be done very well, and you can clear off all the cartilages and all the bones, and you can see if there is damage there. Now, it's important to understand that this structure, the larynx, the hyoid bone, and all that, it can be examined by the pathologist of record. Generally, I don't know their state laws there, but it can be examined. It just can't be sent away. The pathologist, I think, would have to go to that office and examine it. It's also important to note that the laryngeal structure and the hyoid bone aren't the only ways to determine if neck trauma occurred. With neck trauma, in terms of strangulation or some kind of just injury to the neck, you also, we're going to look at the skin. Now, granted, there was decomposition in this case, so it's going to be a little bit, it's not going to be as good as if it was fresh, so to speak, but you can still see it really well, sometimes even better when there's decomposition present. So presumably there was no injury to the skin of the neck. And then once you remove the skin and you actually look inside, there are what's called strap muscles, where if I turn my head, you can see those little muscles there. Those can have injuries such as hematomas. They can be ruptured, and that can be seen as well. So presumably those structures did not have visible injury, or else it would have been reported. I also don't know how much of the strap muscles were left with the larynx at the original institution. Okay, so sometimes they will keep the entire strap muscles together, and there's really no data in that respect for the second pathologist. But the second pathologist can look at the skin and the subcutaneous tissue. So if there is pressure or injury, generally you can see it even without the larynx. Also, it's important to note that you can see the inside where the spine is, the cervical spine, and you can see if there's trauma there. If there is a strangulation or injury to the neck, a lot of times you will see it on the cervical spine or within the carotid arteries. So I realize this is a long discussion, but this is a very niche process that occurs. You would only be a medical examiner or a forensic pathology fellow to even know that this process occurs, where the original office of record keeps this. In fact, I've seen a number of people who say that they are death investigators, they are police officers, they are former autopsy techs, and all of this was done incorrectly. And that's why you have to listen to the actual experts that do this work. Any forensic pathologist here is going to say this, what I put here in this paragraph is exactly what is done. If they are not a forensic pathologist, you might want to take that information with a grain of salt.
They cut that boy's throat out his body, sent the rest of it to DC like it was a UPS package with a missing item. And then they got the nerve, the absolute nerve to call it underdetermined. I need you to understand something right now, y'all. We ain't talking about no accident. We ain't talking about no tragic drowning. We talking about a damn cover up. If you sitting there thinking, well, maybe it was a standard procedure, then you need to get up out my comments and go watch somebody else, because I ain't got the time for that shit today. Not today, okay? Not on this one. Dr. Roger, Howard University Hospital, National Medical Association president, former chief medical examiner. This man credentials longer than Mississippi's whole history of lynching our black bodies. He got on Nolan's body on July the 10th, and let me tell you what he didn't get. Throat gone, The larynx, gone. Lungs, gone. Stomach, gone. Everything that could have told us how that boy died. Every single piece of evidence that could have closed this case and opened it wide for the world to see, missing. Then they want us to believe that this was standard procedure. Since when is standard procedure lose the throat of a black boy found dead in Mississippi water with white friends who lawyered up before his mama could even plan a damn funeral? Since when? Since when? I will wait. Please explain that shit to me. And don't get me started on the back of his head.
I don't believe he drowned. I believe he was killed. But I'm a judge that has to weigh all the evidence. Preliminarily, that's what I see. You don't leave your friend on an island, seeing that he has left his phone, and not at least go back. You came there with him. You left him there, you say, because he wanted to stay. But you notice that he's left his phone. How was he going to get home in the first place? Wouldn't he need his phone in order to call his transportation? Or they should have known some of that. He would have said, I'm going to get home by such and such way. Hey man, I'm not coming. Y'all go ahead. I got a young lady. Okay, man. Is she going to bring you home? How you going to get home? You don't ask any of those questions? So you must have asked those questions. If you didn't, that's more evidence that I believe contributed to the reasonable suspicion. So I'm with the prosecutor. How about that so far? So you won't have to say that the judge is making conclusions without getting the evidence. The prosecutor has found enough evidence to create a reasonable suspicion that a crime occurred. And now they're going to interview everybody and come up with some answers on whether to indict. So I'm there with the prosecutor so far. Take it to the grand jury. Now I have to wait until what the grand jury comes back with before I support any charge or any lack of charges.
So you feel like it was foul play?
Yes. It doesn't make sense. And it creates a presumption. When you don't have an explanation and someone ends up dead and you hear contradictory or stories that really aren't credible because they make no sense, and you hear the same story from three people, who knows? They may have told 2 or 3 different stories. We don't know. We will know when that grand jury comes back. So that's the case in that scenario.
Nolan Wells' independent autopsy has arrived, but that wasn't even the biggest reveal. Dr. Mitchell opened Nolan Wells' body, and something was missing inside. Nolan Wells' throat was not there. This is part 4. Here's what we know. No fluff, just facts. Now let's get to the facts. Nolan Wells' preliminary report is public today. Attorney Ben Crump released it in Chicago, the setting, the NAACP National Convention. Colin Kaepernick, of course, paid for the entire autopsy. Ben Crump thanked him from the podium. The pathologist was Dr. Roger Mitchell, former D.C. Chief Medical Examiner, board certified with decades of experience, currently president of Howard University Hospital. Now, the autopsy had arrived, cause and manner of death undetermined, both pending further investigation. Attorney Crump walked the report page by page. When he read the phrase organs removed, the audience audibly reacted, but that step is standard in every autopsy. Organs get removed, examined, then returned. Dr. Mitchell dissected the back of the head, found a 12 by 8 inch red mark deep in the tissue of the occipital bone. No broken skin, no fractured skull. The origin, they said, is unknown. But that wasn't even the most alarming finding. When the body reached Washington, the interior neck structures were absent. Trachea, hyoid bone, laryngeal cartilage, all retained by the initial pathologist. Dr. Mitchell said this is common practice, but only when there's concern about the throat. Without them, they cannot rule out neck injury. Then came the sentence everyone waited on. The pathologist cannot rule out foul play. One word carried the whole process conference. transparency. Attorney Ben Crump called it the foundation for justice. 7 questions still stand open. What led Nolan into the water, his body position when he was found, whether water reached his airway, injury to the interior neck structure, intracranial hemorrhaging inside the skull, the composition of his stomach contents, and the toxicology report still pending. Ben Crump wants Dr. Mitchell before a grand jury. He closed by repeating his name to say justice for Nolan Wells. Follow at the Bow Media as the toxicology drops and we uncover more within the press conference and any new findings. And now I shine the spotlight on you, the viewers watching this moment play out in real time. Here's the question I bring forth to the table for open discussion. What are your thoughts about the Nolan Wells autopsy reveal? Bow.
Sam here for a Nolan Xavier Wells update, and this is a tough one. I know, like a lot of you, I'm watching the autopsy report, and the cause of death is undetermined. It's so emotional hearing them talk about this beautiful, beautiful man, this child taken way too early in this kind of way. And you see racists in the comments saying, you guys owe those boys an apology, the white boys. No, we don't owe anybody an apology because they didn't send the throat. They didn't send the throat. They didn't send certain parts of the body. And they said his body was too decomposed. Why do you think? It seems like they waited long enough for the body to decompose so you couldn't see bruising. Now, there were no fractures on the body, but in the report, there is a huge red line on the back of his head. How do you get that from drowning? Also, when they found him, when he had drowned, he had all of his clothes on. In every little video we've seen of him, he's only in his blue bathing suit. So this still stinks. This still sounds like Mississippi is covering up another wrongful death of a black man, all right? And I'm so tired of people saying race baiting. This is all about race, because if he was white, we wouldn't even be here. The first initial report would have given us everything we needed, but it is obvious that Mississippi is withholding information. I mean, why would they not send every single part of this beautiful boy to the second autopsy? So it's undetermined at this point, and it means that there is further investigation needed. But again, let's ask, why was the throat not included? He said he cannot determine a cause of death without that. He can't determine that he wasn't choked, that something happened. And it's heartbreaking. Please pray for the family. I can only imagine having to sit through and listen to this. It's heartbreaking, and we need justice for Nolan Xavier Wells. Secret Service Sam Out Sampson for president of the world.
Meanwhile, one of the last people to see Nolan Wells alive is speaking out to Inside Edition today. 18-year-old Nolan vanished during 4th of July celebrations on an island off the coast of Mississippi. His body washed up 2 days later.
There were so many people. I mean, boats, they were like on top of each other almost, like, I mean, it was intense.
Lucas Aviz is a college classmate of Nolan at Southwest Mississippi Community College. He says he went to Horn Island with his family and friends on a different boat and ran into Nolan there.
I'd say he's pretty hammered. He would slur his words. His movement was slow.
Nolan and 3 friends had arrived on Horn Island at around 11 a.m. According to authorities, the friends say they left around 4:30 p.m., but they say Nolan told them that he was staying behind. According to reports, he had met a young lady and wanted to hang out with her. Lucas says he was devastated when he heard later that night that his friend was missing.
He may have been taken by the current, and I'm guessing he drowned. There's a certain part of the island where the current is pretty strong.
Inside Edition cameras return to Horn Island. It's an uninhabited barrier island in the Gulf and a favorite destination for teens who want to party. There are also dangerous currents. This video shows how crowded the island was that day. No matter how it came about, nothing can take away the pain of Nolan's family or the tragedy of a young man who died too soon.
Today's funeral service is being paid for by Tyler Perry. Family and friends are paying tribute today to Nolan Wells.
Funeral services for the 18-year-old were held inside a Mississippi church today, his casket arriving ahead of his visitation earlier today. The services come 2 weeks after his body was found in the water near a popular barrier island following a 4th of July boat trip there with friends, and as the investigation into his death remains ongoing.
Such an outpouring of support, Kate and Christine, for Nolan's family here today. We saw the sanctuary here filled with hundreds of people, so many of them former teammates from the high school that Nolan went to, and the teammates that he played with in college were there as well. A busload of them came in from the community college that he went to, really just to stand with Nolan's family and to show their support for the family and really to embrace the memory of the person that they considered a brother. I do want you to hear from Nolan's parents. His father spoke about how much pride he had in his son and the young man that he was becoming, and his mother spoke about the light that he brought into every room that he entered.
He often told us that one day he wanted to have 3 daughters that he would name Sophia, Charlotte, and Olivia. He had a deep love for the Lord and an unwavering faith that was evident in the way he lived his life. Lastly, I ask that each of you keep Nolan's memory alive. Hold him close in your hearts. Share his stories and never stop saying his name. As long as we continue to remember him, his light will continue to shine through us all. Nolan, we love you. We'll continue to fight for you. Yes. And until we meet again, and thank you all for coming. Thank you.
You want it to be the best. So I poured all my knowledge into you that I could by taking you to the gym to work out, taking you to the beach to do drills in the sand, teaching you how to watch film, how to study your opponent's strengths and weaknesses. And you carried these teachings all the way through high school and had an amazing run. Also during that time, you made a lot of friends. You helped a lot of people and you became well liked by many. It really warmed me and your mother's heart when we would get a phone call or an email from a teacher talking about something that you did for a fellow student. All the teachers love Nolan. And today it just shows us how much he meant to the community, to the country, and to the world.